Yeah, it's yin and yang, which is also, it's tension, relaxation, it's music again, right? It's harmony. It's harmony. The yin and yang symbol is harmony, and it has tension and relaxation. That's what it is.
Welcome to the Power of Music Thinking. This is the podcast for people with a musical heart and a wicked job. We're looking for stories, insights and tools from the big world of music to inspire leaders and followers to listen, tune, play, and perform in whatever field you're operating. Hello, music thinkers around the world. This is Christof Zürn. Welcome to the Power of Music Thinking, the podcast where I facilitate conversations with exceptional people who perform at the top of their fields and who also happen to be musicians. Today, my guest is Ralf Meulenbroeks. Ralf has led a fascinating multitrack life. He started in physical engineering, doing a PhD in large-scale solar cells, before pivoting to become a full-time professional bass and viola da gamba player for 10 years, winning an Edison award and playing hundreds of concerts worldwide. And after an injury led him to change path again, he reinvented himself in education. So, today, he is a full professor of scientific literacy and chairs the Freudenthal Institute at Utrecht University, where he leads 120 highly autonomous academics. Yet every morning, he starts his day with meditation and playing the viola da gamba. In this episode, we talk about the immense psychological pressure of playing the viola da gamba solo in Bach's St. Matthew's Passion and how the intense process of silently tuning gut strings during a performance translates to tuning in with his academic team. Ralf also shares his expert research on what we all get wrong about intrinsic motivation, why an ensemble's ability to instantly forgive mistakes is an essential leadership tool, and how a 35-year practice of macrobiotic cooking perfectly mirrors the balance of a musical chord. So please enjoy this deep, insightful, and multifaceted conversation with Ralf Meulenbroeks. Welcome, Ralf. Welcome to the Power of Music Thinking.
Thanks for having me, Christoph.
Ralf, I start every conversation with more or less the same question, and here it comes. What was your first sonic experience that had an impact on you?
A sonic experience. I mean, purely sonic. I remember a bookcase crashing down on me when I was 3 years old. Does that count?
If it's your first sonic expression. So,
well, I noticed that. Actually, I noticed that many of the impressions that I get are, in the first place, sonic. It's really funny. I noticed that also when that's why I love listening to people rather than I don't need to see things. It's more important for me to hear them. That's really important. So I tend to remember sounds and voices and phrases better than images. Whereas for my partner, it's completely the other way around. I mean, she is all image. There is absolutely, it's so yeah. I mean, the bookcase crashing down on me because I crawled up on it. I know there must have been some very deep search of impulse to search for knowledge there, and it crashed down on me. And I think that's probably one of the very first, yeah. So yeah, I'm guessing that's the answer.
Nice. And if you go into a direction like a recording or something with music or a performance, what would be your first or most memorable sonic experience?
So there was, even though my mother came from a very musical family, there was not a lot of music in our house. I mean, my grandfather was my mother's father was a very musical person who played a ton of instruments. I mean, basically everything that could be played in the tiny village that he lived in. So those are basically wind instruments like the tuba, trumpet, trombone, clarinet. I mean, he played it all, and and my mother was a very good singer, but of course she was not educated as such. I mean, she went to work at 13, so that's a very, so I'm a first generation academic as well as many other people have similar stories. So she never got a chance to work on that talent that she absolutely had. But there was music in the house, and it was, so the main thing that I remember, and maybe it's a bit a cliche, but it's like it was my father loved beautiful things, and he spent, I think, an inordinate amount of money on, for example, a stereo back in the day. I mean, he was a primary school teacher. There wasn't a lot of money, but I mean, he was had to provide for the entire family. But he did spend money on I remember this record player with 2 loudspeakers on top of it, and it was a Philips thing, and it was, back in the day that was really it was top of the line basically. And I remember him, of course, playing Bach's orchestral suites every Sunday morning. I mean, that's definitely. I mean, it's sort of a cliche, but I mean, it's like that's the first thing that pops up. So maybe there is something there that I'm playing a lot of Bach. I've been playing a lot of Bach in my own life. Yeah.
Right. So there's a clear connection. So Rolf, will you expand a little bit? Tell us a little bit more about yourself. So what do you do? And because we had a pre-talk, and you're doing just quite an immense different kind of things, but some stand out. So maybe you just give us a short introduction so that the listener already understands which way we might go.
Okay, I'll try to be very brief. So it's basically always been about science and music in my life. So I was a very avid learner in both fields. In both fields, it took me a long time to find my niche, I must say. So I started off music-wise. I started off playing piano and guitar, and then I played the bass guitar, and then from the bass I evolved to the double bass, and which I actually studied at the conservatory, and then I moved on to the viola da gamba, which is basically sort of a smaller version of the double bass. Not many people know that. I mean, double bass, of course, is the same family as the viola da gamba, whereas the cello and the violin and the viola are part of a completely different family altogether. It's very interesting to go into that, but don't need to do that now. So that's one track, and then the other track was the science. So I studied physical engineering, and I did a PhD in physical engineering, actually plasma deposition. So basically, very early attempts to produce large-scale solar cells back in the early 90s.
Oh wow!
So, and after that, I also there had to look for my place. I worked at a couple of companies. I worked at did some fundamental research. Then there was a time just after my father died, which he died very, very suddenly when I was 29, so relatively early. He was only 57. I'm actually older than I'm older now than he ever was, and that sort of set things in motion. And I was actually a full-time professional musician for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So I played viola da gamba. I made 15 albums. I played thousands of concerts. Yeah, basically all around the world, and got some successes played in the Concertgebouw Orchestra with my instrument, and I did, anyway, got an Edison award and all that. So that was all fine. And then there was and life sometimes life plays tricks on you, right? So so what happens is that something bad happens. No, the thing is, of course, you never know whether it's bad or good. That's the whole thing, when something happens, and it's so at the moment sometimes you feel, oh man, this is bad, and then in my case it was I got a really bad experience with an impresario because it was actually pretty soon after I got the Edison prize, which still is quite a big deal, and it's. So, and at the same time, I got a problem which like a tendonitis, right, in my left arm. So it was like, so it was that was, And I knew stories from people who had tendonitis, and it was like, whoa, that's bad news for a musician. I mean, because you can take a rest for a year, and then you're going to do the exact same movements, and and it usually comes back. Well, so I got some early signs there, and these two things, together with a completely coincidental meeting, led me to decide, okay, maybe I should explore teaching. So I went on to become a physics teacher at a school. So I got my second master's in education, and I did my and I went to teach, which I found very, very satisfying. I really loved it, and maybe I would have done it still if, well, there was some change in the school management and things. Okay, the school went basically down the drain very rapidly. So, and then the university asked me to come and train physics teachers. So that's what I did. And I started to do research again, basically into human motivation, which I find very interesting. Human motivation for the STEM subjects, so science, technology, engineering, mathematics subjects. And so, I continued to work there. I worked at the Freudenthal Institute, and here I am, just turned full professor a year ago and chairing the Freudenthal Institute, and still playing the viola da gamba every day. So that's a short history.
Absolutely, that sums up like the music and science. So, yeah. As a physics professor for, what is it, scientific literacy?
That's the formal chair. Yes, the scientific literacy. Yeah.
In physics. So. Working in two different fields or even more fields. So I read much more in your CV about different things that you do. And you also have a private pilot license, by the way.
Yes.
So you're doing different things, and that's a bit the idea of the power of music thinking, to find out if people are doing extraordinary things in different fields, how they relate to each other, and that's a bit where I would like to dive in. But maybe first we have to explain the viola da gamba and what kind of special instrument it is. And can us tell a little bit more, because viola, some people have an idea about viola da gamba. Gamba, Italian, means these are the feet, right?
A leg, actually.
The leg, sorry. Yeah.
So you had the violas da braccio, which were the arm violins, which you played like this, and you had the violas da gamba, the leg violins, which you play between your legs. They're more like a lute. They're from the lute family, lute tradition. So they have a flat back. The back of the instrument is flat. It's not curved as it is in the violin. And it's the bowing is very, very different. The bowing is with not with the hands like this, but with the hands like that.
Yeah, from the upper side. Yeah.
Yeah. So you keep the yes, right. So the bow, you keep the. It's sort of like you keep the bow the other way around, and it's you can still see this in certain double bass players in Germany. The German way of playing a double bass is indeed with the hand like that instead of that. We're talking about a time when instruments were not standardized, right?
Right.
It was not. Right. That's what I also find beautiful about that, is that and maybe there's the first connection between other fields, that I always really appreciate the uniqueness of a certain region or culture. You know, I think that's beautiful. So the way of, I've got an old instrument made in Germany, and it's very different from an old instrument built in France. You know, there are the gamba builders or viol builders. They can immediately see, okay, this was built there, and I like that. You know, it makes so it's not standardized.
What makes the difference is the wood. And by the way, 2 weeks ago, per coincidence, in Nijmegen, where I live, I went into the NEMA and I saw a viola da gamba maker. So I thought, okay, so it's not so exotic as we think. Okay. So if you hear it once, and if you've never seen a cello or something like this, it's like if you would put the guitar between your legs and you just string it with a bow in a certain way.
But viola da gamba has a very, very rich history. I mean, it's like it was the big instrument in the middle of the 18th century. I mean, it was all over. You know, it was very associated with France, with Versailles, with the Ancien Régime over there. You know, it appears that it was the favorite instrument of Louis XIV. That's one of the things, and there's Madame de Pompadour. So it's very much associated with those people. In England, it was associated with the concert, the idea of the concert. So you have a couple of So consort, so with an O, two O's. So you have the instrument of different sizes. So sort of like a string quartet, but then for a gamba, which is called a consort. And there's a huge amount of gorgeous music by English composers for that instrument. It's not a niche instrument. Back then it was just like one of the core instruments. I mean, it's only after maybe the French Revolution that it drifted into oblivion, and then it was sort of reinvented in the 1960s. Basically, it started to gain real attention back in the 1960s, and the Netherlands actually played a pretty big role in that. So now, I mean, there's a huge literature for it, which I very, very much adore. It's fantastic. One thing, if people don't know the difference between the cello and the viola da gamba, okay, the dead giveaway is always the number of strings, right?
Yes.
Okay, so viola da gamba there are some with 5, but most have 6 or 7 strings. So that's always a dead giveaway. If you see a bowed instrument with 6 or 7 strings, you can guess that it's a viola da gamba. I mean, you'll not always be right, but in a fair amount of time. So that's one. And also, of course, you can see there is the bowing, which is sort of upside down, which is very conspicuous. You can play the chords just like a guitar. I mean, the tuning is very much like a guitar.
Yeah.
Again, not exactly, but very much like a guitar. And so that means that you can play chords, and so if you can accompany yourself, you can play chords and a melody together. It's with arpeggios, and it's just very rich. And there's very rich solo literature for the instrument as well. So
beautiful. I read in the Dutch newspaper NRC, and it was about you. Let's say the week before you played the St. Matthew's Passion.
Yes.
How do you prepare for it? How you prepare while doing other things like being a professor, for example?
Well, start with the last thing. I mean, it's people. Yeah, so basically, I lead a very. I just basically lead a very disciplined life. That's it. Very boring, very disciplined life. I get up very early. I do all my physical exercises. I do meditations, and every morning I start with playing the viola da gamba. That's the deal. So I get up as early as I need to be able to play the viola da gamba before I even do anything else. So that's but technically that's not true. Usually I do a couple of emails first, and then I go to viola da gamba. I must be honest here. So, but I mean, every morning that takes a huge amount of discipline, because it means that but I mean, as a musician, you are used to that, right? That's one of the things that I think is so, because so many people tell you, I wish I could do that. I wish I could play the piano, the flute, the violin, the viola da gamba, whatever, saxophone. And what these people never realize is that the amount of discipline that goes into every every person who masters a classical instrument, it needs an enormous amount of discipline. Always, there's no way around it. That's the thing. That's also a beautiful thing about being a musician, is that very from very deep, that only practice makes perfect. And of course, it doesn't make perfect because it's never perfect. But I mean, that's. I mean, but you really need to put in all these hours, and yes, maybe there is talent. There's different opinions about that. I do think, as I said at the beginning, I'm very auditory, so my sound is just very important to me. It's when I hear a strand of music, sometimes it's only very ephemeral, and I can get really, really strongly moved. It's and I don't have that with images, and some people do. Some people go to a museum, they're really moved by a painting. I very rarely had that. I think the only time I had that when I watched the Madonna of Michelangelo in Bruges, in Brugge.
Oh, yeah.
That was actually the only thing I was absolutely moved by the beauty of that. But it happens all the time with sounds, So that's so anyway. So that's the first thing you notice. As a musician that you need the discipline, and I think that's something that works in other fields as well. So it's not something that just comes to you, right? There may be some talent, as I said. You maybe have some special sensitivities, but then comes all the hard work. And so that's one. So you said, okay, then how you prepare for the St. Matthew Passion, because the thing, of course, is, which makes it so special, is that it's only being played, in the Netherlands at least. In other countries, you may have performances of the St. Matthew Passion in the middle of the summer, but in the Netherlands, it's only confined to maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks before Easter. So it's really, it's tied very close to Easter, and you might even say it's very tied to our religion, right? Religion doesn't play a big part in, maybe it does play still a big part, but anyway, formal religion doesn't play a very big part in the Netherlands at this moment, and you can have different opinions about that, but that's just the numbers that tell you that. But in this case, I think Easter is a very important moment in the year. Wherever you go, right? Easter is, in the northern hemisphere. Easter is the definitive change from winter to spring, right? It's of course not exact, but it is. And what I also like about Easter is that it changes dates every year. I love that. It's just not the same. I love the idea. So it has this sort of organic quality about it. It's tied to the universe, to the big cycles, to the big. Again, that's another link with physics. It's tied to the universe, and then you have this moment which is determined by the position of the moon, and all this, and then there's Easter, and of course there's this absolutely fabulous story of the man who did things differently 2,000 years ago, right? And who went all the way in doing things differently and believing in the good, in the people. And it's a beautiful story. It has all the elements of human strength and beauty and incredible weaknesses in this same story. It's fantastic, and then you have Johann Sebastian Bach, who was like, who wrote these absolutely immortal pieces, which would have been completely forgotten if it weren't for Felix Mendelssohn reviving them in the middle of the 19th century, which is also crazy, right?
Right. That's something we really have to understand. Absolutely. That in this time, or even when he died, I think his son was even more famous than he himself.
Absolutely.
And then
he was the man. Carl Philipp Emanuel was the modern composer. He was brilliant. He was avant-garde. He was fun. He was Sturm und Drang. He was that was fantastic. And Bach was this old, really solid composer. A bit boring, but and there we are with these fantastic pieces. So anyway, that's
150 years later, just to be clear. So, and we didn't have recordings in that time. We only had some kind of remembrance, maybe from parents to children, and
from teacher to teacher, maybe, right? From teacher to teacher. And that's why I always. That's the big thing about the viola da gamba, right? Since there was this interruption for 150 years, so there was no oral tradition from teacher to teacher on how you play these things. So it really had to be invented. Anyway, so going back to this, so you had this absolutely beautiful, deeply human story, and of course also deeply religious, but also deeply human, especially the Matthew. The Saint John is more is stronger in the religious part. But in the Matthew Passion, Jesus is very, very human. Intensely human. And it's so all the plethora of human emotions is in all these. And then if you have these, and then you have Johann Sebastian Bach who writes this incredible notes. And then there are these two arias only, in total of maybe 10 minutes, where the viola da gamba is accompanying the singer basically, and it's playing the solo around the singer. So it's embellishing all the violins, and so you have this Geduld aria in the beginning with its recitativo before, and then you have the Komm süßes Kreuz just after. And the interesting. So in modern orchestral practice, usually the viola da gamba only plays these two pieces. Right. Which happen after the break. So before the break, you don't have anything. You're free. And then after the break, you have these two pieces. Both of them are technically quite challenging, but I mean the second one, Komm süßes Kreuz, is like really, really difficult.
Okay, what makes it difficult?
It's the combination of a very difficult rhythm. So bam, ba bam, ba bam, ba bam, ba bam, and a lot of chords, a lot of big arpeggios, which you sort of have to mold in this rhythm, which is very difficult because the arpeggio takes time. So you have ram, paham, paham. So you have to really. This is very difficult to keep the good rhythm. Is very, very difficult, and you have all these very you have all these very quick strands of music that sort of embellish the singer, and it all has to fit very, very tightly. So but technically, if you look at it, it looks like it looks like very hard work. If you look at these, which it is, because you are helping Jesus carry the cross, right? That's what it is. Jesus is carrying the cross while you're. That's the aria. It's your Komm süßes Kreuz. You help Jesus. It's about Jesus carrying the cross. So that's why it's so heavy. So the preparation is mental. It's also emotional. It's also, so I start maybe 2 months before I start playing these areas, because you haven't played them for a year, right? That's the thing. That's the thing. You haven't played them for a year. So you play them and start playing them very, very slowly. So maybe at 1/4 of the tempo, just very, very slowly every day. And then once I'm really familiar. I play them by heart, by the way, also. So I make sure that I get them in my head well again. And then at a certain moment I feel, okay, now I've really got it there somewhere. And then you start speeding it up, and then basically towards the end, it's just really drilling. You have to really it's top sports, right? It's very difficult. It's short. It has to be there at that exact moment, which is also one of these things that is difficult to understand for people that don't play music. That is always, especially classical music. You have this enormous movement, which is called the St. Matthew Passion, and then it has its tempo, it has its atmosphere, it has its character, and it moves and it moves and it moves and it moves, and at the very moment, and then it has to happen, right?
So. Maybe to recap, Ralph, this means the St. Matthew, the Passion. How long is it? 1.5 hours in total, or
no? It depends on the tempo, but it's usually 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Okay, music. And there is a break in the middle. Yeah.
And there's a break about
But just to try to recap for people who don't know it and re-understand it, it means in the first part you're not even on the stage. You usually might be somewhere else and just waiting, and what else? Then there is the break. And what's the most important thing is, because then you have to tune again to the orchestra. And then you have 2 moments where everyone is looking or listening to you and the singer. And that's the high pressure performance. So I just want to make it a little bit dramatic here, because
it's not an exaggeration. It's exactly every year I'm dying at 1,000 deaths whilst playing this thing. It's just that's the way it is. It's just like that. And the thing is, it's just like when you have a sprinter, the 100 meters. It's like so the pistol goes bang, and you have to do it. And this is exactly the same.
Yeah.
The conductor says that, and you go.
What do you do in the first part? So you're somewhere backstage. What do you do? Do you prepare? Do you smoke or do you drink?
No, I don't smoke. I usually also do a meditation. Then but it's true, because usually you're alone at that moment because everybody else is playing. It's a very almost surreal situation, right? Everybody's playing, and you're back there, and you're and you're So I'm do some reading, but not too much because I want to also prepare, as I said, emotionally. So I do some physical exercises. Maybe you can't play because the instrument is in the room, right? It needs their gut strings. They're very sensitive to temperature and humidity. So
you
I have
can't
to
hold your instrument to get used to it. The instrument is there where the playing is because of the temperature. So that means you have to prepare without your most precious, most important instrument. And when there's the break, so everybody comes into the room where you've been and you jump out because you want to check the tuning, I assume.
Absolutely, that's the main thing. The tuning is like that. That is that can be hellish. I mean, the tuning is you have the 7 strings, your gut, and they're very sensitive to humidity and temperature. So the whole second half, I'm working on. I mean, the first solo is quite at the beginning, so that's okay. But then you have almost 45 minutes to wait until you play the second solo, which is the most difficult one, and then you have to. I think it's more difficult. And then you, so the entire time I'm only listening. Okay, where are my strings? How's it going? Because they can easily fall by a full tone.
Okay.
I mean, it's not small change. I mean, it completely go out of tune in 10 minutes. So you're like, that's also, you have these enormous stress factors. So you have this.
And you just know when you start playing, when the conductor gives you the sign, the cue, then you go, and then you realize, oh my God.
That's the thing. You can't really tune out loud. So you have to do this listening to the other instruments, to the organ and all that. And sometimes the organ goes up, right? Because the temperature rises. So the organ rises in pitch. So you have to. I'm so very busy during those 45 minutes. Incredible, but by the way, that's also one of the things that you learn as a musician. It's this typical of this performance thing. So for me, it's just very, very easy to go out in front of a large crowd of people and do something, right? Whatever it is. I mean, I have to get the it's. I mean, almost everything is less trouble than playing the St. Matthew Passion under these circumstances, right? There's such a massive amount of stress that is there that you need to cope with somehow. That's one of the things that I think especially classical musicians need to deal with enormously, because you can't do it again.
So you're prepared very much just to make the analogy to make the link to your other work. If you have to present something, then you're in your, let's say, in your trained performance mode.
Absolutely. I feel very, very much at ease. Actually, sometimes I feel much more at ease when I'm on a stage than when I'm not on stage.
Right.
It's very. Yeah, that's and I think that's something you cultivate while you're being a classical musician, and especially this. Of course, when you have a solo concert, which I did a lot, it's different. I mean, you're alone and you can tune and you can start, and there's other things that are important there. But I mean, it's especially when you're a part of this larger structure, which is in this case called the Matthew Passion. Then you really everything needs to fall into place. So this is. Yeah, I think this is something that we can really use as musicians. It's the ability that we have for complete total focus for maybe only a couple of minutes or maybe 20 minutes when it's a concert, but a complete total focus and feeling very much at ease at the same time, because you have to relax. I mean, the thing is, to make things worse, I mean, Christof, the viola da gamba is an extremely sensitive instrument in terms of playing as well. So if you're not relaxed, the sound is absolutely horrifying.
Yeah.
It's absolutely terrible.
I think that
So,
goes for a lot of instruments, by the way. And I hear
yeah, yeah,
if you talk with musicians, it's like, for example, to make the parallel to your morning ritual. I also get up in the morning, I do yoga, and then I play 3 songs on the shakuhachi, and
yes.
and that's also for me like it's a morning ritual. And the thing is, sometimes I already feel that's I'm in a different state. So it's never the flute or it's never the instrument in some way. It's also a lot of you, and I think that's when you learn an instrument. That's why I often advise leaders or people that really want to make a difference learn an instrument, and it's not about playing it perfect, but learning about yourself when you play. And that's also a bit the link with the framework of music thinking. It's listen, tune, play, and perform. And it depends on what kind of music you're playing. So listening is always on. If you don't listen, you can't tune in or tune out, or you can't anticipate. If you don't do the tuning or you don't understand the tuning, you don't know where you are. Or the worst thing that I experienced often when playing together with someone, you're out of tune, then you try to tune a bit higher,
Yes.
or the other tries to tune a bit lower. So and then it's even worse. So you have to know where is the right tune. And tuning is also not only a pitch; it can also be the tempo. For if you play in a very big hall, it's different.
Yeah.
And the playing is also to find the edges of what can I do different, what can I do extra, what can I do very, very special. And at the very end, it's a performance. And I think that's something that with an instrument you can learn a lot. And I think it really doesn't matter what kind of instrument. Even I would say a modular synthesizer would even give you the same problems like any other, because at a certain moment something can go different. And I think that's why as a musician you're so much prepared. Can you make the link to your work? And you said it's intrinsic motivation that's in your focus. So do you see any analogies or links to your, let's say, other?
There's a lot. I mean, I like that. First of all, intrinsic motivation, I'll keep that in mind. But
we will get right back to Rolf to hear what almost everyone gets wrong about intrinsic motivation. But a quick favor to ask. If you're enjoying this conversation, the single best way to help this podcast grow is to hit the subscribe or follow button right now on whatever app you're using. It really makes a massive difference. Also, I've just launched a brand new Substack. It is in the very early stages. Everything is completely free, and there are only a couple of newsletters up so far. So if you want to be an early member of the community and get updates as we build it, just click the Substack link in the show notes. All right, let's get back to Rolf and what he has to say about leadership, listening, tuning, and the truth about intrinsic motivation.
The idea with leadership, I think this is because I'm leading a big institute now with 120 people, right? Most of them very stubborn academics. So it's not an easy audience. They're all very intelligent and they're very autonomous and all that. So first of all, I mean, listen. That's the first thing. As a musician, you are used to listening. And in communication, usually, maybe also between scientists, people usually don't listen, right? People want to talk. That's one thing. You learn to listen as a musician. And I like also the idea of tuning, because it's tuning in at different levels, right? So I completely recognize. I play with a flute, Eleonore Pammeyer, a beautiful flute player, and so sometimes we have these very unisono things with the viola, the gamba, and the flute, and then each of you know that at that moment you are fully with the other person. That's the thing. You are not with your own playing, you are with the other person. And then indeed, as you say, okay, if you hear, okay, I know that for Eleonore, this A flat is probably going to be a bit high. So that's why I am just, okay, I played a bit higher. So that's the beauty about it. So you're really in tune. And that's something that you can use also in meetings, for example. Tuning in with that actually, now to come think of it, at the beginning of every meeting, I always tune in with everyone. So I ask everybody how they are doing. I mean, of course, yeah, usually it's a meeting until 10 people. I always ask, okay, briefly, and very often, more often than not, something comes out of these tune-ins that is important for the meeting. Because maybe someone has had a personal experience that was very uplifting or very disturbing, which is very important that we know. So that's tuning in as well. Maybe quite literally the translation of into leadership. But what you just said is very true. It's when you play an instrument in the morning. Okay, sometimes the string breaks. Yes, okay, true. And sometimes it's very humid, and the instrument is just more difficult to work with. True, but generally, it's me. It's not the instrument.
No excuses.
No excuses, and that's beautiful because that means that every musician that has in this respect a high degree of reflection. I think that comes with playing an instrument. So I like your idea of leadership and asking leaders to because it's hard, it's hard, and it means failure. It means getting to know your limits. So it's all these things that are important for a leader, because a leader is not doesn't know it all. Is not that's. They are not omnipotent. They're fallible humans like all of us, right? So and that's what the instrument teaches you. So I like that a lot. So then intrinsic motivation. So the thing is, by the way, the word intrinsic motivation, we need to be very clear about that. Because it's in 99% of the times it's interpreted completely falsely. I mean, intrinsic motivation is the drive. You are driven by intrinsic motivation when the activity that you perform is its own reward. That's the only definition of intrinsic motivation. It's only intrinsic if the activity is its own reward. So the moment you start doing something with a certain goal in mind, it may still be all kinds of different motivation, but it's not intrinsic because you are trying to get somewhere. Intrinsic motivation is always in the moment. That's the beauty. That's also you have the connections with yoga and meditation there, right? Mm-hmm. It's always in the moment.
Right.
It can never be anything else because it's the activity is its own reward. It's not supposed to get you somewhere. You're already there, and it's enjoyable or it's interesting. And that's intrinsic. So that's why I sort of, looking back, I was always very much driven by intrinsic motivation. I always did things because I just loved doing them. That's the thing. And that's also very important because if you intrinsic motivation has been, as I learned many years later, and as I'm doing research in myself now, is an extremely strong predictor or robust predictor for performance, which is very counterintuitive for this world, because we think the more you need incentives to get performance, right? That's our almost our religion, right? So you need incentives, and people do better. So you need to give them rewards with money or whatever, with free time, whatever. And then, whereas research actually tells you that when you start doing things just because they are their own reward, because you're enjoying yourself, because you find it just interesting or enjoyable, that leads to the better performance. I always give the example of a cross-country runner who was one of the best in the Netherlands, and she told me that when she was running, it was not about winning. It was never about winning. I mean, she won, but it was never about winning. She was just enjoying these all these little muscles working in perfect, and there comes the word, in perfect harmony, right?
Yeah, right.
That's what she was experiencing, and and she described it to me. It's like, okay, this is beautiful, because you also know, Christof, I'm sure you know it. If you I mean, you're in a very, very different field. I mean, even though I did play free jazz back then when I was I will play Albert Mangelsdorf, and you know him.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest trombone players of the 60s and 70s.
Brilliant. And he had this fantastic record with Jaco Pastorius.
Yeah.
Do you know that one?
And Jaco Pastorius was the bass player of Weather Report. So if people listen from that direction.
And there's this beautiful record with him and those two and Alphonse Mouzon on the drums. And they have this fantastic improvisation, which are mainly free. I mean, Mangelsdorf was also like very free. I mean, there was just some melody, of course. I mean, it's not completely free, but there's an enormous amount of freedom and improvisation there. So I also know that sometimes also when you play free jazz, it's you know, there, just as I do with the flute player and the viola da gamba, there is this very, very intimate connection between the people on stage, and you know that, okay, now it's happening, and almost always everybody has the same experience at the same time.
Yeah.
It's never that somebody else, if you have this experience, it never happens that someone says, no, I didn't have that at all. I was completely out of it.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't happen. We all know now it's there. So that's anyway. So that's also intrinsic motivation is very important, and I think it also, there is something inherent that there needs to be something inherently enjoyable in playing the instrument. If that's not true, it's just very, very hard to put in all these hours, you know, because if it's not inherently enjoyable in some way.
But does this not also, so if people listen to us and maybe don't play an instrument, but like music or the music thinking, isn't it for all the other fields?
Sure.
If you don't do intrinsic what you do, and isn't this, if you're, let's say, a recruiter or in the HR department, just to name something, how can you find out that people are intrinsic motivated, or can you help them to find out what motivates them? Is this something that
this is
in your
science.
leadership role with 120 people, is this something that you think about?
All the time. You know, it's always, so it's basically, that's why I find motivational theory so interesting. So we have this intrinsic part, which is only very small in most people in our society. It's very small, which is actually a tragedy, but okay, that's the thing. And then there's a whole range of other types of motivation, which, well, the two important ones are, one is that you want to reach a certain goal, which is your own goal. So you say, and this is also very important with musicians, right? So sometimes you get completely fed up with practicing scales and thrills, right?
Yeah.
And we all know that feeling. Sometimes, and it doesn't work, and the next day, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. So that's not, maybe at a certain moment, it's not inherently enjoyable anymore. But then you go into a different mode, which is fine. Say, okay, yes, I know, but I want to play this in Matthew's Passion next week. And I just want to do this. So then it's still your choice.
Yeah.
Right. But many people are in a very different realm, is that they do stuff because they have to.
Mm-hmm. That's the point.
And they're forced by someone or someone else, or this is the really big one. They are forced by themselves. They feel something. There is what's called introjection, right? So there's something in a person that makes them do things against their nature. It can maybe against their will, but they still do it because they want to be. So this is where ego comes in, right? So I want to be the best viola da gamba player in the world. You know, that's ego. That's got nothing to do with enjoyable. It's ego, and what motivational theory or self-determination theory tells us is that the further away you go from intrinsic motivation, in the end, the worse your performance is going to be. So this is so very interesting. And this is indeed what you're saying. This goes for every field. So what I always would like to, suppose there's a new student comes in my new PhD student comes from who wants to do research. So the first question I ask is, suppose you had all the money in the world and all the resources, whatever, and all the time. So which question would you really like to answer? That's the first thing I ask you before we talk about anything else. I first want to know. So that's why I really want to know what these people find truly interesting. That's my goal here. So I think that can be a very interesting question. Like, so what do you really want to know? And then, of course, from there you have to go to, again, a certain moment, practical things come in. I mean, there's a limited amount of time, there's a limited amount of money, blah, 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 blah. That's all nice. But I mean, if you start with that, you at least tap into that source of things that people really want to know, that they intrinsically want to know, because they truly find it interesting. That's it. So what do you find interesting? Yeah, well, just find it interesting. Yeah, but explain. Well, I don't know. I just find it interesting.
Yeah, that's good. That's a pretty important thing.
Absolutely, it's like music. So what do you play the gamba? I just think it's beautiful. I love it. So what do I love it? Yeah, I just love it. I don't know. And then of course you can always say something. Yeah, I love the sound, and it's like the silvery sound, and I like the versatility. Blah 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 blah. That's all cognitive. But in the end, you don't know. I mean, why do you love someone? I don't know. I just love her. That's the thing. That's the only answer. That's so intrinsic motivation and love. Of course, they must be related. I mean, otherwise the world
absolutely.
Wouldn't turn.
And I think that's such a profound thing. I read it in the book of Stephen Alexander. You might know him. Do you know the book, The Jazz of Physics?
No, I don't. No,
it's super interesting. So there are also TED Talks of him. So that's why I saw him the first time. And he's really much into string theory and stuff. So for me, by the way, it's a harder read than it might be for you, because I'm not so much into physics. But there's one part where he talks about his teacher or his professor, and there were. It relates a bit what you just said. So the question is, what do you want to do? And he was talking about it, and then he said, but what else do you like to do? And in his case, it's music. He's a saxophone player, and he said, why don't you play more music? Because he had the idea that I can read it. I can read it.
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
So, creating an analogy between a known idea in one field and an unresolved problem in another field could give you new ways of exploration to open up. So, and I think that's something. Sometimes we talk about the dichotomy. So when two things are, let's say, more or less disconnected, but they are parallel in some way, which we can recognize and recognize as patterns. But that's a bit also my hypothesis, that when you're a musician, you always can go back to this inner, and sometimes you can't even explain it. So there are also examples from Einstein, when he was working for hours in his room. He would get out of the room without talking, go to the violin or the piano, playing 1 hour, and then going back and maybe has an idea from, hey, wow, that might be interesting. And that's why I'm so excited about these different fields. And by the way, I think it might also work for other fields. So let's say my bias is music, and to research this, but it might also work for the other senses. But that's something in music. There are so many patterns and so many people that working with them, just also to connect in a way beyond words. So, for example, there's one thing that pops up in my mind. Last week, I saw a video of, let's say, the biggest politicians in the world, like Macron visiting. I have to remember. I think it was the Armenian president, and there was a video where Macron is singing a chanson and the other president playing the drums. And
Oh, really?
yeah, I can put it into the show notes. And what really strikes me is not how good Macron can sing a chanson. I think that's secondary. And it's also not, is the president a good drummer? But the way how they look and listen to each other just to connect with each other. That's so powerful that, yeah, so that's a bit the link between one field and the other.
It's very interesting because there is of course this thing which is a double-edged sword as the word harmony, right? So you as a musician, there's always this idea floating around you of harmony, right? You're always looking for it. I mean, there's dissonance and there's consonance. Yes, we know that, but I mean, together that's harmony, right? That's what that's even what the field is called. This field is harmony, but it's so it can be what you just described is the fact that these two people who are completely in their heads, probably, right? All day they are completely in their heads, completely left brain, and then suddenly by a chanson which may have some emotional meaning for the person, who knows? Probably, because otherwise he wouldn't have chosen it, maybe. And then the other one, drumming, which is like very physical and also challenging. And at the so they are out of their comfort zones, but at the same time they are completely dependent on each other.
Yeah,
that's the beauty with music. So you always know as a musician that you are, whenever you're in an ensemble, and you very often are, you are completely dependent on each other. So there is a connection which is extremely deep, right? It's fundamental, and that's something you cannot never explain to people who haven't experienced it. That's the thing with if I play together with the flutist or with another viola gamba player, which I do very often as well. There is this I can't describe it. It's a complete interdependence. It's completely interdependent. You absolutely have to trust each other. You have to forgive each other if something goes wrong immediately. There's no way of going, so what are you doing now? No, you don't do that. You can't. So you try to solve it, right? So if somebody makes a mistake, and of course people make mistakes, everybody makes mistakes. So then you're forgiving. You say, okay, how can we solve this?
Right.
How can we solve? Because okay, there's a mistake there. So maybe I'm also maybe I'm in a different chord, or maybe I'm a quarter. We're not completely together in tempo. And the thing is always, and you both have the same attitude. That's the beauty. Both of you have the same attitude. How can we change this? How can we bring this together again? And that's a beautiful thing that I think maybe these leaders tapped into at that very moment. And that's very, very powerful. By the way, it is a double-edged sword, because as a musician, as I know as leading an instrument, sometimes harmony at that very moment just cannot be arrived at. And that is it's almost painful for a musician, right? That it's not possible at that very moment, that you have to be very strict at a certain moment. Sorry, this is not going to happen, or I'm very sorry. We can't do that for you at the moment. That's so it is double-edged. But I think this, and it also it ties in the other part of reflection, right? It's so if there's a problem let's suppose there is a small problem in the group. You're playing something and somebody makes a mistake, or somebody is distracted or whatever, and it starts to shift, and then everybody is like on their toes. Okay, what do we do? And this extreme listening and tuning in, and then you go on with playing, and then usually if this happens at a high enough level, the audience doesn't even notice it. The audience doesn't even notice. It's just like it's there. Yeah, well, it's great, and we were like, cool. We were like, whoa, we were like sweating. We lost each other, and it's like, oh, I didn't notice anything. You were having so much fun there. Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful.
I like your thing about the harmony, because it depends a bit on the genre that you're in. you can also have harmony in disharmony. So
Sure.
in very modern music, you can also say there is maybe then harmony is maybe not the best word, but it's like it's a perfect combination, a perfect fit of different things. And sometimes you need that tension to also open it up to something else. So I think that we should sometimes help people. It's not always harmony is like it's a C major chord and everybody's holding it as long as possible. So it's more like we need the tension, we need the ups and downs, like in real storytelling, in real things that makes us emotional.
Yeah, and harmony is as you said, harmony is always tension and relaxation. That's it's continuous, and sometimes it's more tension, sometimes it's more relaxation. That really depends. I mean, it's and I completely agree. Sometimes music needs an enormous amount of tension in order to come across. Right? It doesn't really matter. So I'm not saying that, for example, Bach is more harmonious than free jazz. In that sense, it's not.
No, for sure.
In ideal situations. But it's interesting. Yeah, these connections with learning. I like the idea of asking a leader to start playing an instrument and just start from scratch. See what it feels like. Do something. See how reflective you get by also listening to yourself, recording yourself and then listening it back. Oh man, this is so confrontational. It's so good for your sense of reflection. Because it's it's you doing it. It's nobody else. It's just you. Yeah, beautiful.
I think it feels like we covered a lot. Is there anything that you thought that would be worth to share?
No, it just thank you very much. It was just a very nice flowing conversation, which indeed went to a sort of a natural end at this very moment. So I'm very happy, Christof. Thanks for having me. Great fun.
Ralph, I have one where I thought completely different. I read in your bio that you're also a macrobiotic cook.
Yes. Well, I started eating macrobiotic food about 35 years ago. So that's way before the ecological shops were there. There was absolutely nothing. It was very, very difficult to get a hold of these things. There's maybe one shop in every big city. But anyway.
Can you explain what it is? And
sorry. Okay.
And also can tell you why I'm asking the question, because I'm a big fan of John Cage. The composer.
Sure.
And John Cage was a microbiotic cook. And because with the power of music thinking, I'm trying to find patterns and see if patterns, make each other stronger. So I thought maybe there's another story behind that.
As a musician, you always strive for perfection, right? So when I got into macrobiotics through an acquaintance, or a friend, actually, a very good friend, I started to dive very deeply into it. So I looked into the literature. So basically, it's based on the Japanese and maybe even before Chinese idea of yin and yang, where there has to be a balance. So balance, of course, also very important in music, right? Balance between the instruments and all that. It's very, very interesting. So macrobiotics is about balancing your diet. That's basically what it is. So you have foods that are more yang and foods that are more yin, and the idea is to have sort of I'm again simplifying usually here, but that's the basic idea, that you make a meal which is balanced. Thing, of course, is macrobiotics can be very easily get very dogmatic. And of course, I fell into the trap because I was very young. So after 2 years, I met a macrobiotic doctor who said, "Okay, Ralph, now you've done it for 2 years. Now you need to relax, right?" So it was a very purifying period for your body, because you're very conscious of it. But then at a certain moment, you have to also let go a little bit, and start to listen to what your hey, there you go again. Listen to what your body really needs, right? So that's another. So you have to listen and tune in to your body. Say, okay, what do I need? That's so starting very dogmatically, which is one of the traps I tend to fall into. But less and less when I get older, I must say, I'm happy to say. And so I right now it's more at a what I would call a healthy level, and so it's not rigid anymore, which is of course very important. Also, a musician, you can never be rigid. That's also interesting, right? So you have to be flexible. That's what you teach these leaders too. You need to be flexible. If you want to learn to play an instrument, you need to be flexible. But anyway, so it's not rigid anymore. But for example, one thing I have done for 35 years is that every morning and every evening I start my meal with a bowl of miso soup. Every morning and every evening.
Oh, wow.
Unless I'm somewhere where it's just absolutely not available. Sometimes when I'm when I'm camping or whatever, there are exceptions, but I mean, that's so right after this show, I'm also going to have a bowl of miso soup. And I think that's one of these very basic things of microbiota. For the rest, I just eat very, very, very little meat, very little fish. I eat lots and lots and lots of vegetables, some rice, but not even so. Yeah, so it's not exactly recipes. It's more like it's almost a philosophy. So you have to have. Yeah, it's yin and yang, which is also, it's tension, relaxation. It's music again, right? It's harmony. It's harmony. The yin and yang symbol is harmony, and it has tension and relaxation. That's what it is. Just relaxation is nothing. Just tension is nothing either. So it needs to be together. That's the. So I hope. No. I know that indeed it helps me ground. Ground, of course, another musical term. It helps me ground in my own body better. So having had this experience of macrobiotic food, very strict, 2 years time, and then relaxing it and listening to, okay, what do I need? And if I need a little bit of meat, I eat a little bit of meat. No, because I know that's what my body tells me. I need this now, but it's very little. I mean, if it's maybe once a month or something like that, it's just very rarely. But anyway, so that's about microbiota. So it's so I got the microbiotics, I got the Tai Chi, I've got the meditation, I've got the music. There's a whole system that I need to function, because it's when I'm at the university, I'm leading this institute, I'm doing my research and doing the teaching. It's just very, very intense.
That also makes the word discipline. Makes a discipline.
Absolutely.
Like what you do. Okay.
Yes,
thank you very much, Ralph. Thank you
very much. It's been a lot of fun. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you want to learn more about Ralph's work or explore the viola da gamba, you can find all the links in the show notes. And as I mentioned earlier, please make sure you have hit subscribe on your podcast player, and feel free to join our early community on Substack. Until next time, keep listening to the spaces in between.